Welcome to Politics World Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week, our guests are Iowa U.S. Senate candidate Josh Turek and the national security correspondent for the New York Times, David Sanger. Remember, we love taking your questions, so write to politicsworldroom@gmail.com for next week's show. Now, we're going to get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics World Room by signing up at Politicon.com. Tell your friends about us. Remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Trust and Will, Quince, Naked Wines, and Beam in our show notes. We thank you for supporting these sponsors because it really helps make this podcast happen. You know, James, with a national security crisis, Russia trying to take over Ukraine, who better to explain what's going on in this confusing week than David Sanger, national security and White House correspondent for the New York Times. David also is the author of an important book, New Cold Wars, China's Rise, Russia's Invasion, and America's Struggle to Save the World. And boy, it is a struggle. David, if the stakes weren't so high, this past week would be a classic satire. Trump had more positions than atoms in the universe. His top negotiator seemed clueless. Europeans vied for who could praise Trump the most lavishly, knowing that's what his fragile ego needed. And Ukraine's Zelensky wore a suit. After all of this, will there be a Putin-Zelensky-Trump meeting? And are we any closer to a real political peace?
Great question. Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. It's great to be back with you. It's been a while. This was diplomacy in reverse. Usually what you do is you do all this diplomatic groundwork, and then you get all the leaders together to go try to ratify what their aides have sort of sorted out. That's not the way President Trump goes about business, as you know. He wants the theatrics of big summit meetings. We had the image of him together with Putin after their, I would say, foreshortened meeting. It was only 3 hours. I was up in Anchorage for it. It was supposed to be lasting 6 or 7. They left without even touching the salmon that was set out for them for lunch. So that tells you how quick. I mean, there's some things that are truly unforgivable in Alaska, and that's one of them. It's also the first time I've ever gone to Alaska in August and not brought my fishing gear. So that tells you just how bad this trip was. And then he gathered the European leaders on Monday in the Oval Office, first in a meeting around a table, and then arrayed around him as he sat at the desk as if they were the pupils. And it was everybody from Zelensky to Macron to Starmer to the head of the European Union, Ursula von der Leyen, Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy. And they were all sort of lined up in this semicircle, staring at him at his desk and looking at another point at his collection of MAGA hats. So it was quite a scene. What did we actually accomplish in all of this? The president went into the meeting saying he had to have a ceasefire or there would be severe consequences for Russia. He emerged with no ceasefire and no prospect of severe consequences for Russia. He said that he said that Putin had agreed that there could be a European peacekeeping force, if there is a peace, in Ukraine to make sure that Russia didn't move on to reinvade Ukraine or go beyond that. The Russians tell a different story. He said that there had been agreement to meet Zelensky. The Russians say when conditions are correct. I can't imagine that Putin would want to be seen as treating Zelensky as a peer. He won't even mention Zelensky's name in public. Russian press refers to him as that clown. So the really interesting question is this one of those things that will lead to something? And I got to praise President Trump for trying, because there has been no conversation underway prior to this. Or is this something that's going to more resemble his encounters with Kim Jong-un
Where nothing
in the
happened.
first term?
David,
Yeah.
I thought Putin dominated him in all sorts of ways, and I think Putin is the key figure here. We're just political hacks, which is why we turn to you. But I think almost anyone I talk to says Putin's overriding desire is to recreate as much of the old Soviet Union as he can, starting with Ukraine. But there's sort of two schools of thought. One says this is a guy who will do anything to do that. He'll lose as many people as he has to lose. He thinks time, as the Times reported this week, time is on his side.
Yeah.
There's another view that Russia is really struggling economically and maybe politically, and he needs some kind of a deal, hopefully from his point of view, better on his terms, and then to regroup. Which is closer to the truth?
They can actually both be true, Al. So first, a modest argument with you on the recreate the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
One of the central arguments of New Cold Wars, which came out last year, is he doesn't want to create the old Soviet Union. He actually thinks the old Soviet leaders were idiots
Yeah.
who gave far too much autonomy to Ukraine and the other former Soviet states, which set them up to break free as they have now. Instead, he wants to create the Russia of Peter the Great. And I'm not invited often into Putin's office, but the one time I was in there and I looked around, there's no portrait of Stalin. There's no portrait of Lenin. There isn't even a portrait of Carville, which is really the most amazing thing.
Oh my God!
Okay.
We can send one, David. We'll send one.
Well, since Putin gave Witkoff a portrait of the president to give to him a few months ago, I think the least you could do is send a portrait of James.
Right.
There is a bust of Peter the Great, and what's that tell you? He actually, and if you go back to his speeches and so forth, he talks about the true Russia, the Russia that was ripped apart in the division up of the Soviet Union. And I don't think he wants all of the old Soviet states back, but he certainly views Ukraine as core to Russia's identity. Now, moving on to your question, which is, can you motivate this guy by economic deprivation or not that would lead to political instability? The theory of the case during the Biden administration was that sanctions would, in fact, change Russia's view. That failed. I mean, I think, they've actually now committed more to the war, more people, more money, more technology. In fact, their economy now is doing well primarily because it is a wartime economy. The whole thing is geared toward churning out weaponry and training the people who need to go do this. So far, there's been very little organized political pushback. So if you are really going to make the economic case for them, you have to show that you're going to cut off their oil revenue. And that's what the president threatened about a month ago when he said that he would do secondary sanctions on countries that bought their oil. And that's China, India, Turkey. He's done India, and that's it. And done India for other reasons because he was angry at them. He has not done the overall secondary sanctions. And if you don't cut off their oil revenue, you're not serious about hurting the economy.
Yeah. Let's look at it from Zelensky's viewpoint. Putin wants much of the Donbass parts he doesn't even control now. That's not just a question of territory. Those are people. They're people who live there. People who don't want to be. They don't want to be ruled by a murderous dictator. What, assuming he has enough leverage? That's a big assumption. What can Zelensky give and what can he not give if we were to get to that point?
So there are two big parts to any deal you get, and one is the land and land swaps, as we've been discussing, and the other is the security guarantees.
Right.
And I actually think the security guarantees are the harder part than the land. What could he give? I think he could probably give Crimea, which Ukraine has not been in control of for 11 years, and those parts of the Donbass that the Russians have taken over and are not going to be ousted from. What's, I think, really hard here is that what Putin wants is parts of the Donbass that he has been unsuccessful in getting militarily, but is hoping to get at the negotiating table. I don't think Zelensky can go do that. I argued at the end of New Cold Wars that I don't even think Zelensky can admit to giving up this territory. I think any kind of solution is going to have to look more like the end of the Korean War, where we signed an armistice and then left for later resolution some disputed land between North and South Korea. Now, at the time, this seemed impossibly difficult for the South Koreans, that they weren't for sure getting back this territory. 70 years later, 75 years later, doesn't look quite so hard because South Korea is the world's 10th or 11th largest economy. It's making, 7-nanometer circuits on semiconductors. Its people travel all over the world. Generations of South Koreans haven't really thought about this territorial dispute. I think Ukraine's got the possibility to be the South Korea of years to come. Look at their technological capabilities just in building drones, right? So if ever a country was set up to be South Korea, this is it. But it would take years, and you can't assure them that that's where they're going to end up. I'm not sure that Putin would take an agreement that was Korea-like and that left unresolved the fate of this territory.
Let me ask one more quick question, then turn to James. I think many people were dubious of a sustained, unified European resolve, which we have seen. Is that durable?
I hope it is. I was skeptical of it. They've held together better than I thought. One reason they've held together better than I thought is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
It's not that he's bringing them together. It's that he's threatening to tear them apart. And they have come to the conclusion that they need to be able to have an identity separate from just the United States being at the core of NATO. Think about what happened after Chancellor Merz was elected in Germany. I happened to be in Germany that week. One of the first things he did was go off to see the French and Macron to see whether or not Germany could be covered by the British and French nuclear umbrella. Well, the British and French have nuclear weapons, but they've never had a nuclear umbrella because they don't have enough weapons to have a nuclear umbrella. But what he was basically saying was, I can't believe in an alliance that Donald Trump is running, so I can't trust the American nuclear umbrella anymore. And it is this sense that they may have to be able to defend themselves without the U.S. at the center of NATO that I think has made the difference.
James.
So, David, in the second administration of President George W. Bush, I worked in Ukraine. I've probably been to Kiev 5 times. Became pretty familiar with it. And I worked for the guy that got poisoned. It marks all of his. Putin tried to poison him. And what I constantly heard, the theory of the case is that the eastern part of the Ukraine, ethnicity is not defined so much by borders. There's a lot of Russian speakers in the eastern part of the country.
Yes.
And they would vote more with actually Russian interests, and because they were kind of sided with Russia, to tell you the truth. And the theory that the Ukrainians had at the time was the Russians didn't want there are people to figure out how much more prosperous Warsaw was than Belarus, because that would ferment discontent. Do you still think that plays in his mind, that he doesn't want prosperity on his western border because it could agitate his own people, or that's not a factor so much anymore?
It might be, but I think he's worried more about the questions of identity than he is about the questions of prosperity. So if you look at the places that he has been most active, starting with Crimea, they are, as you point out, the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. And that's where he knows he could gather most of the votes. You may remember there was a sham election in Crimea after he annexed Crimea, and they voted overwhelmingly, big surprise, to join Russia. Certainly, there are parts of the Donbass where he is now, and the rest of southern and eastern Ukraine, that would certainly vote to join up with Russia. It's bigger, stronger, more prosperous in their regard, because the Donbass has been a pretty bleak industrial wasteland. You know, that the economic vitality of Ukraine is around Kyiv and the tech sector that has turned out those drones. It's not about what you see in the East. One of the other arguments that Putin has going on his side, James, is this: that the borders of Ukraine have always moved. I mean, think of Lviv, in the West, right, closest to Europe, which now is part of Ukraine. But we've all got friends whose relatives, whose grandparents grew up there when it was part of Poland. So a point that I think Putin is making is there's nothing sacred about the borders. And I actually think this is one of the reasons he was eager to come to do the meeting in Anchorage. Not only was it a place where he wasn't going to get arrested for war crimes, but he didn't come for the fishing, I'm sad to say. I think he came in part to say, this was once Russian territory. We sold it to you for $7.2 million. By the way, not a bad land transaction, right? And
Yay,
for
Seward.
all of Alaska. Yeah. The only winner out of last week's meeting, I think, was Seward. Actually, yeah, this entire thing. Okay. And I think in part it was the subtle message that territories shift. And frankly, I don't think the president is doing himself any favors on this. The other morning, he went on one of the Fox shows, and he said, what were the Ukrainians doing getting into a fight with a country 10 times stronger than they are? Of course, they're going to lose. Russia's big and strong and nuclear. And what this was essentially, and this gets to another core argument of new Cold Wars, is that Trump is trying to take us back to an era where the world was not organized under the rules that were developed at the end of World War II by Truman and the whole present at the creation crowd. He is back to a world where the only thing that matters is power. And if the only thing that matters is power to you, then, yeah, the Ukrainians shouldn't have gotten into a fight with Russia. Now, you may recall they were invaded. They didn't exactly invite this fight, except if you're Donald Trump and you've taken the Putin line that Russia had no choice.
James. So, David, one of the things I've learned working overseas and thinking about is war is profitable. When I was working for Santos in Colombia, the largest sticking point in the peace that didn't hold up, by the way, thank you, won the Nobel Prize, was people were making, the FARC didn't want to give up because they were making money.
Yeah.
And the only skill you had was how to operate a machine gun. And I think sometimes people don't want to end wars because too many people are making too much money, and it keeps people employed. If that's part of your experience in being a correspondent for many years?
War makes money and sanctions make money.
Okay.
Sanctions make money. What is it? It creates a black market that frequently is dominated by the elite. So think about, for example, just to put in another location, think about Iran. So we've put so many sanctions on Iran now, you can't really figure out what it is that isn't sanctioned. But what that created was a huge black market that benefited the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, right? The core military, which dominated much of the trade. Well, you're seeing some of that going on in Russia. It's a pretty corrupt system. And the sanctions that are on Russia are making, they're making a fair bit of money. And then just building up a military industrial complex that has turned the economy, given the economy a sort of a drive to fuel this war. It's sort of like what happened in the United States during World War II. And then it's a really hard shift to downshift to a non-war economy when it's over.
So if you're in Brussels and you look, I think this thing started in February 2022.
That's right.
That's great. In terms of the performance of the Russian army, is it about what you expected, better than you thought, or actually worse than you thought?
I'm no great Russian historian, but people who are tell me the Russians always start wars badly, over assume what their capabilities are, get creamed, and then over time come back with the force of mass. And that's certainly what happened when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, right?
Or Napoleon, for that matter.
Blitz through. That's right. Napoleon ran into the same problem. And Al covered that story. That was a big story for him.
I called him Nappy.
You were working for Le Figaro.
yeah. He did some. Go back and read that stuff. These were really great stories. They came back, and eventually the force, but it took them about 3 years, repelled Hitler in what is now the parking lot of IKEA in outside Stalingrad. It's pretty wild that basically that's what's happened here, where the mass has thrown out of it. And, as somebody said to me the other day when we were up in Anchorage, the war is a meat grinder, but the Russians have more meat to throw into it.
Yeah. David,
and that's what's happening to Zelensky now. He's running short of people.
David, let me ask you, I've never been a national security correspondent, but I ran 2 big bureaus where we prepared for sessions like the Putin Trump session. And I remember that, they would talk about people spending weeks preparing. You noted that earlier. But also there were people who were really smart who were involved with the presidents. Kissinger and Brzezinski, a little before my time, but Scowcroft, Holbrooke, Jim Baker, Bill Burns, even Jake Sullivan. Is there anyone around Trump who knows a goddamn thing about any of this stuff?
So Marco Rubio, whether you like him or don't like him, or think that he has gone through one of the great ideological transitions of modern times, from being a Russia hawk to trying to sound like he is pro-MAGA here, was on the Foreign Relations Committee, Intelligence Committee. He's been around. I think you could certainly say he had as much preparation for the job as, say, John Kerry did before he became Secretary of State. He's also doing 2 different jobs right now, Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. That hasn't been done by one person since Kissinger, and that was not considered to be a successful experiment. They're 2 very different jobs, and it's a lot to be putting on.
But you don't
on
consider
one person.
Rubio a Scowcroft or a Holbrooke or a Bill Burns, do you?
No, I don't. Just given the, Brent Scowcroft had a long military career, had a long intelligence understanding. I knew Brent pretty well in the latter 20 years of his life. And, he had a big, giant worldview and had worked with George H.W. Bush in creating the sort of post-Soviet world, the post-Cold War world. They are short of talent. They have put Witkoff in charge of these negotiations. He's a real estate friend of President Trump's from New York. He had no prior experience. And if you think about it, the big things he was involved in were Israel, Hamas, and Russia, Ukraine, and those two aren't scoring so well.
David, we're running out of time. A very quick question because it goes to your book. How does Beijing and Taiwan view this today?
Well, the Chinese are watching this really carefully because they think that if the United States sort of gives up and says, okay, we're going to redraw the borders, big powers win out over small powers, we're not necessarily going to get hung up with the fact that it was an illegal invasion. That's pretty good news if you're Xi Jinping and you're thinking about Taiwan.
Yeah. How critical is setting your affairs with trust and will, James?
Well, it's critical, and unfortunately, until recently, that was a province of people that had a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but it matters, if you got something you want to pass on, you want it orderly, you want to give something to your children or your other loved ones, or your school or whatever you want to do, that you can do this, and it's simple, it's really affordable, and it's just it's one of these things that it's become egalitarian, and thanks to these people, you can now do this at a reasonable cost. You don't have to be a millionaire.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, many of us, James, let's face it, we're not spring chickens, and we want to be ready for any eventuality. No matter what age you're at, it's critical to be prepared. So we had to sound the alarm. A lot of us don't realize that a will doesn't cover everything when it comes to estate planning. Thankfully, trust and will can help ensure that your loved ones are covered when it comes to things like medical decisions, power of attorney, and things that really matter. Don't wait to start getting prepared. Go to trustandwill.com/war room to get 20% off their simple, secure, and expert-backed estate planning services. By now, you may have realized that James and I aren't exactly tech experts. I guess that's an understatement. But no matter what your skill level, the website is super easy to navigate. That means that you can quickly find out about how Trust and Will can and does help you make sure your assets and any future wishes are secure. I know I want my family to be ready for any eventuality, and our young producer has said he got his dad signed up as soon as he heard about Trust and Will. He hasn't told us whether he's left everything to himself, but in any event, he said it's not about the money, it's about being prepared. Maybe, maybe not, but I know that Trust and Will can ensure the future of what you've built is in your hands. It's the ultimate peace of mind. Their easy to use website is simple to navigate with all of your information and documents securely stored with bank level encryption. Best of all, they make your plans their top priority. Each will or trust is state specific, legally valid, and customized to your needs. It's no surprise they have an overall rating of excellent on the Trust Pilot with thousands of 5-star reviews. So don't wait. Join the hundreds of thousands of families using Trust and Will. Trust and Will. After all, we can't control everything, but Trust and Will can help you take control of protecting your family's future. Go to trustandwill.com/war room for 20% off. That's 20% off at trustandwill.com/war room. The link also is in our show notes. James, economists have debated what is the biggest concern. Is it inflation or is it unemployment? I think Trump may be giving us the answer. Both. Producer prices surged last month, and the latest jobs report suggested a softening economy, and the full effect of Trump's dangerous tariffs haven't kicked in yet. Trump's answer, of course, is to blame someone else. This is really one of the great scandals. He wants to he first fired the head of the BLS so he could get someone to give him good numbers, whether they're accurate or not. Now he's demanding a Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook, resign because of dubious allegations of mortgage fraud. This is the next weaponization. I want everyone out there to remember this name, Bill Pulte. He is the head of the Federal Housing Authority, an obscure job, basically, except he's already tried to bring mortgage fraud cases against the Attorney General of New York, a Trump opponent, against Adam Schiff, and now against the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook, who happens to be black. This guy Pulte, who has had his own charges of misconduct, is a henchman for Trump. So any of you Democrats out there, if you have a mortgage and you're a critic of Donald Trump, look out, because Mr. Pulte is coming after you. This is a weaponization of the federal government, James, the likes of which we've never seen, and it's to camouflage a really an economy that really looks like it's heading south.
Well, you know, Albert, the Brits do have a way with words, and the Telegraph of London, which is actually very Tory, they call it the Torygraph in London, described the U.S. economy brilliantly, accurately. It's a redneck recession. Actually, the people that are getting hurt the most are Trump voters. And, you know that the people that are getting hurt just as much are young, I hate the term, but let's just say young non-white males who had really low turnout and low participation in 2024 presidential election. And the conventionalism is that they didn't think they had anything at stake in this election. Well, you know what? You had a lot more at stake than you thought, people. You really did. This is not the prices, and particularly the prices of things that matter to people. Electricity, what I call the light bill, is exceeding everything. All right. I'll tell you another thing, car insurance. It's outstripping everything. And if you have a car and you borrowed money to have the car, which most people do, most people, in particularly middle class or sort of lower middle class people, if they have a car, they got a car note, their car insurance is going up astronomically. Don't even mention home insurance, but for a lot of people in the United States. And then you can go with, you want to eat hamburger? I can't afford steaks, I'll eat hamburger. Well, I can't afford that anymore either. It's outstripping the inflation. So there's a lot at stake here. It's not going very well at all.
Well, James, you're going to have to help me, because I remember I just looked the other day. Meat prices have gone up 9% since January. 9%. That's a huge increase. I thought Donald Trump told us he was going to cure inflation on day one. Am I misremembering?
Well, but look, if all these studies linking meat and heart disease, maybe this is the best thing ever happened to cardiology. I mean, I don't know if you're trying to think of something good, but most people, okay, so I can't eat a T-bone, but geez, I'm going to eat a hamburger. No, can't do that either. And it's catching up, with him. His, now the latest is this YouGov Economist poll is consistent what we first reported in the UMass Amherst poll. We talked about it, and it correctly was the canary in the coal mine, because coming right after that, we saw the Pew poll, and now we're seeing another one. In other words, his numbers are in the toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. I want to turn to J.D. Vance in a minute, but I just want to out there, before I do, don't forget the name Bill Pulte of the Federal Housing Administration. He is already going after Adam Schiff, Letitia James, and now a Fed governor with, I think, questionable charges of mortgage fraud. If you have a mortgage and you're a Democrat or a Trump critic, Bill Pulte may be coming after you. This is called weaponization. To go to J.D. Vance, James, he's down in Georgia. And he is hailing the big, beautiful bill, except you know what? They're not calling that anymore. What he is calling is the working class tax cut, and blasting John Ossoff, the Democratic senator, for voting against it. What a total, complete charade, hoax. Every study, CBO, Wharton, says this bill gives riches to the rich and takes from many of the poor and the working class. And extending the 2017 tax cuts did extend the tax cuts for some middle and working class, but they were small. And the Democrats, including Ossoff, always said We want that. What we don't want are the tax cuts for the billionaires extended and for the greedy corporations. You know, James, I'm surprised, but J.D. Vance didn't mention that in his Georgia campaigning.
So, memo to Senator Assault. Let J.D. Vance frame the debate. Accept his terms of the debate. As we pointed out, the most unpopular piece of legislation in recent times, in this century, is the big bad bill. Mm-hmm. He wants, if they give you a gift, take the gift. All right? The vice president came to Georgia and he said, he's attacking me because I voted against this. Well, guess what? I did. And I would do it again and again and again and again. When you get a gift, take the goddamn gift. And J.D. Vance, and you and I have talked about this, I'm going to talk about it publicly. He went on vacation. People, Florida resorts are hurting. Las Vegas tourism is down substantially. The national parks, Yellowstone's down 15%. So, okay, he's entitled to a vacation. I'll give him that. Guess where he went? To a place called Oxfordshire in England, which is a tony wealthy place that rich Londoners go to. Call it the Martha's Vineyard of England. And why we didn't blow this up? Okay, why didn't the Tourist Association of the Florida Panhandle blow this up? The Las Vegas people, the California people, the Wyoming people. You mean you can't vacation and your wife and kids in his own country? I'm getting ready to go to Lake George. Could be the most beautiful place on earth. People in upstate New York would have been glad to have his money. But what does he do? He goes to a tony English village, and by the way, they wouldn't even let him in the best pub because employees in the pub said it wouldn't serve him. This is what, use J.D. Vance and just kick the shit out of him every chance you get.
Every Democrat, bring him into your district. You want J.D. Vance.
You want J.D. Yeah, J.D. fucking Vance. Go to Oxfordshire.
If you want to look good this summer, how perfect is the stylish and affordable clothing at Quince, Mr. Carville?
Look, this stuff is good. It fits well. It looks good. And I don't want to say it's ridiculously cheap, but it's very, very affordable. And, when you go out, you go to Brooks Brothers or something like that, you're paying about 11% for the clothes and 89% for the name. Here you're getting clothes, and you get clothes that fit and they look good. It's a hell of a product to have.
Yeah, it really is. Because you don't have to drop a fortune on basics when you don't have to. Quince has good stuff. We're talking high quality fabrics, classic fits, and lightweight layers for warm weather, all at prices that make sense. Everything we've seen ordered from Quince has been nothing but solid. If you haven't heard, Quince has closet staples you want to reach out for over and over. They have everything from cozy cashmere and cotton sweaters from just $50, breathable flow knit polos, and comfortable lightweight pants that somehow work for both weekend hangs and dressed up dinners. The best part is that everything with Quince is half the cost of similar brands. That's because Quince works directly with top artisans to cut out the middleman. So you can get luxury pieces without the markup. Plus, Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. As soon as we saw this stuff, as we were, you're going to be blown away. And it gets even better. The second you try your new clothes on, you'll see that the fits are perfect, the fabrics are incredible, and the style is unmatched. Everyone needs Quince's extra fine Australian Merino polo. There's nothing better for looking your best in the summer heat. And there is so much more. James and I have been looking into some new activewear for our summer adventures, and Quince has us covered. As good as Mr. Carville looks in his new gear, my Quince favorite is their luxurious stretch wool dress pants. They feel amazing and are perfect for looking good, getting things done on the hill, or just reading in a recliner. And don't wait. There's no reason to wait. Keep it classic and cool with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/war room for free shipping on your order and get 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/war room to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/war room. The link is in our show notes. James, our guest is Josh Turek, an Iowa state legislator and a leading candidate for the Democratic United States Senate nomination. He's a state legislator, an Olympic gold medalist,
Paralympic.
I was about to say that. You beat me to it. It's still an Olympic champion, a Paralympics. He was born with spina bifida. He had 21 surgeries before the age of 12 and has gone on to a very successful athletic and early political career. Josh, your story is an inspiring one. I would tell everyone out there, take a look at his video called Underdog. Josh Turek and Underdog. It's one of the best I've ever seen. But you're running in what once was a purple-blue state that has become solidly Republican. Democrats haven't won a Senate race or a gubernatorial race in almost 20 years there. Trump won by, I think, 13. Those are pretty bad odds for any Democrat, aren't they?
Thanks for having me first. I appreciate it. Here's what I would say about Iowa. Iowa, at our core, we are a common sense state. I really believe that post-Trump and post-COVID, we have masqueraded as a much more red to those on the coast than what we actually are. I think you only need to look at Trump's first midterm, where we won 3 of the 4 congressional races, nearly won the 4th. And you look at, for example, 2022, very recently, where we were only 1.5% away from having 3 of our 6 statewide officials being Democrats. 30 years, we had Senator Harkin, and I'm a common sense prairie populist, much like him. And everywhere I go, all around this state, both in the urban and the rural areas, we are seeing turnouts that we have not seen. There's a lot of folks with buyer's remorse, and I'm hearing that from independents and Republicans everywhere that I go. People saying, I voted for Joni Ernst and I voted for Donald Trump, but I did not vote for this level of naked corruption and for cuts to people's health care and food assistance just to give tax breaks to billionaires. And so that's what I really, really fundamentally believe, is that at our essence, we are a common sense state. And I think that what I've been able to do out here in a very red area, the reddest area represented by a Democrat, is indication that the right candidate, the right message, and the right work ethic, you can win races.
You got a primary contest, Albert. Do you worry that the party will be pulled to the left, as it often is when there are primary contests, you and the others?
You know, I don't think so. In the end, I'm really, really clear of where I sit politically, and I'm going to talk about the kitchen table issues. That's what I talked about winning out here in a county that Trump won by 20 points, and in the 2 communities I represent, Trump won by double digits. I'm going to talk about lowering costs. I'm going to talk about a livable wage. I'm going to talk about affordable housing. Talk about supporting small businesses and small family farms. Talk about affordable healthcare, which, coming with a visible disability, I come with a level of credibility that I don't think much do. Supporting pharmaceuticals, things like that. That's ultimately what people care about. I think they don't even care as much about R or D as much as they care about, let's just have someone that actually cares about the people and is going to fight for solutions to the problems that Iowans are having.
What are you going to say about immigration? Because you know it's going to come up.
I can talk about this at a personal level too. My wife is an immigrant. We met when I was in Spain playing basketball. She's Dominican by birth. She's Spanish by passport. We went through this process. It was we were denied in Trump's first administration. We were denied an interview, and we were sent papers to say that you're going to be deported in 90 days. We spent thousands of dollars. I understand how complicated this is. We need an easier roadmap to citizenship, but we need border security. And I've said openly that I think that the Biden administration didn't do a good enough job on that. I think that there's a common sense middle ground there.
Medicaid is an issue that you really care about for very, very understandable reasons. Senator Joni Ernst, who you could face in the general election, says the only people who lose Medicaid coverage are those who are there illegally, illegal immigrants, people who are not working, and that no one who deserves Medicaid and is on it now will lose it. What are you going to say to her?
she's not paying attention enough to how the Medicaid's going in this state. We've already got a rural hospital crisis. We've got massive healthcare deserts in our rural communities, dead last in OBGYNs, dead last in PMEC beds. We've already had the CEOs of these places. We got 1 in 5 Iowans that are on Medicaid, 2 in 5 in the rural communities. This is already a system that is already dramatically underfunded and broken. One of the reasons why I first ran for the state house race was because the privatization of Medicaid. I was working assessing and providing wheelchairs for the disabled, particularly with individuals with muscular dystrophy and Lou Gehrig's disease. We were showing internally a 1,000% increase in the denial rate for power wheelchairs. This is just frankly wrong. We got 22,000 disabled Iowans on our HCBS waivers, the longest of which is 6.5-year wait. We've lost 31 of our skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes over the last 5 years, largely due to lack of reimbursements. We've got the average direct care worker in the rural communities is only making $13.50, leading to a massive crisis that's affecting the elderly and the disabled. If she thinks the Medicaid system is functioning, she's sadly mistaken.
James.
So let's stay on Senator Ernst for just a second, because I'm just, don't live in Iowa, but I've kind of observed her, and she looks like she's having some kind of personal crisis. And she's not definitely she's going to run for re-election. Do you think she's going to actually run for re-election? I mean, I know you were speculating, and
Yeah, I mean,
she
I
talked to
can
you.
only speculate. I've actually only met with her once. I went up there the day that my session ended at the State House. I knew that the big beautiful bill was coming up, and so I went up to speak to every single member of the Iowa delegation. Met with Senator Grassley, met with Senator Ernst. I went up there with several pages and documents about what this was going to do to the disabled community in particular, and with the cuts to the P&A grants. We are looking at 140 disability organizations like Disability Rights and the DD councils that we're looking at losing huge amounts of funding. So she couldn't plead ignorance to that. But other than that, I've never had any personal interaction with her. She came out the other day and said, well, bring it on, when they asked her about me entering into the race. And it sounds like she's got tough talk now to save her political career. But it wasn't a whole lot of tough talk out there to save the 1 in 5 Iowans that are on Medicaid.
Yeah, I'm just reading a headline. CNN data guru is actually pretty good. Trump's big beautiful bill is the most unpopular legislation in decades. I cannot tell you, you go boy, when you're talking about the big beautiful bill. Don't back off of it. You're not for it.
110,000 Iowans are gonna lose their health care, and again on a situation that was already at crisis level out here, and it's something that I can speak to with a level of credibility. Again, I'm only here because of these social safety nets. We were on the free summer lunch programs, everything that I went through economically, and certainly on the healthcare side of things. I had 21 surgeries before I was 12 years old, all of which took place at Shriners Hospital, because the only way that my family could afford it. I'm only here because of the American with Disabilities Act, because we had a senator from Iowa that was out there that understood the importance, fighting for the most vulnerable, fighting for social safety nets. And we deserve to have that once again out here. Someone who's fighting for Iowa and Iowans, not just fighting for billionaires.
So I was a friend of Senator Hawkins. I recall he had a brother that had disability. Am I remembering correctly?
Yes.
Correct. His name is Frank. He was deaf, and he actually, the community that I represent, Council Bluffs, is where the Iowa School for the Deaf is.
So Josh, I grew up agrarian, so I have been a long time, but it strikes me that the combination of tariffs and unnecessary immigration crackdown is going to be pretty harmful to Iowa farmers. Do you hear that when you're out in farmland,
That
foreign
is,
country?
yes, that is without a doubt. When you're looking at the immigration issues, that's going to affect the ag industry. These wild, chaotic tariffs. I think the big fear that I'm hearing from family farms that I'm speaking to is that this could turn us into another 1980s farm crisis that we had out here, where we ended up losing at least 50% of our small family farms, which we have. We've lost at least 50% of these small family farms, and that has also shifted us politically too, and it's led to this erosion of rural communities. I mean, the stalwarts of your rural communities is your rural hospitals of which the Medicaid cuts are going to decimate them. And then here in Iowa, I'm not sure how familiar you've been following Iowa politics, but what used to be a point of personal pride for all Iowans, we were #1 in public education. When I was in first grade, #1 in public education, and now we have precipitously dropped down to number 26. Now we're giving private school vouchers, of which we increased their funding 44%, even though we increased public schools only 2%. We're going to see rural schools close. And, if you don't have a hospital and you don't have a school in these rural communities, then you've already lost half of your family farms. These rural communities are not going to exist.
So, back to Al real quickly, but how's my friend Rob Sand going to do in the governor's race, you think?
I think Rob's going to do great. And I think that what Rob is out there doing is similar to me. I would consider myself a common sense prairie populist Democrat. And I think that Rob would define himself somewhere in there as well. He's talking about trying to represent everyone. He's not afraid to also say some of the issues that us as Democrats, where we have had failures. He's trying to reach out across the aisle and represent everyone. And I think that's what we need out here in Iowa.
Well, we'll see if Politics War Room is as critical as the Wall Street Journal was to his campaign. That was certainly a good piece. Let me ask you this: I want to tell our listeners to begin with that we also had a child born with spina bifida, so we know a bit about what you went through, Josh. But you think you developed this because your dad was exposed to Agent Orange in Vietnam. You had an incredibly tough childhood.
Yep.
How has that affected you today?
Well, I will say this, that struggle or suffering early on in life, it for a lot of people, they don't make it through there. Sadly, I see far too many that were born with a similar situation to me that were not able to go on and have a successful life. But I will say that for those that make it through, it builds a level of character and of mental strength that cannot be broken. One of the great things that I say I'm uniquely prepared for what modern politics has turned into and the toxicity is because of the economic struggles and certainly because of the healthcare struggles that I went through. This will, regardless of how bad this gets, this will not be the hardest thing that I've ever done. I've already gone through the hardest part, which was my early on in my childhood. And I would also say that high level athletics, representing my country, what that teaches you is that teaches you the hard work and the discipline and the dedication of what's required day in and day out, which that's what this is. It's not a physical grind. It's really more of a mental grind. And it also teaches you just to put your head down and work and not worry about the external noise. And that's something that's really valuable in this too. And I have a deep why. And I think that will get you going through the hard times, which is I understand how valuable and important these social safety nets are. When you're talking about the disabled population, you're talking about the 504 lawsuit pulling away the initial civil rights protection, what the American with Disability Rights was built on, about cutting healthcare benefits and food assistance, SNAP benefits. We need to get back to uh, fighting for the most vulnerable, fighting for social safety nets, and that's what I'm out here doing. And in my time, not only my personal self, but I've been involved in nonprofit work for more than a decade for disabled individuals, so they have access to adaptive sports because of the huge impact it made on my life. I've also fought for in the for-profit arena where I've assessed and provided wheelchairs. I know this firsthand. I ran because of the privatization of Medicaid. When I joined the Iowa legislature, I said, I don't care what committees you put me on legitimately, but I have to be on HHS budget policy because our Medicaid and our healthcare system is so damaged, so underfunded, and it's hurting the disabled and elderly the most. I want to get back to what we had for 30 years here with Senator Tom Harkin, which is prairie populism, fighting for Iowans, fighting for social and economic justice, and fighting for the most vulnerable, those that can't afford to have a lobbyist.
Josh, one thing that's changed since Tom Harkin shepherded that ADA through 30-some years ago, that was bipartisan. It was signed and advocated by President George H.W. Bush, and there were a number of important Republican co-sponsors. I don't think you have very many Republicans today, including Senator Ernst, who are much interested in that issue. I want to ask you one final question and turn it back to James. You're in a wheelchair. Does that limit your ability to campaign?
It makes me less efficient, but I don't think it makes me less effective. And being able to win out here in what is the reddest part of the state that's represented by Democrat, I've already given you the numbers on it. It certainly wasn't easy for me. I represent one of the few areas in Iowa that's genuinely hilly. And if you've seen the launch video, Yeah, you've seen that is a true story. Every single day, going out for months and months, and going out and dragging my wheelchair up to people's door to be able to have a conversation with them. And I talk largely with Republicans and independents because that's the only way that the math worked. And inevitably, the very first question that people would ask me is, "How in the world did you get up here?" Well, I drug my wheelchair up here, crawled your stairs to have a conversation with you. That's how important it is. Now, I wasn't efficient. It took me probably 4 times as long to crawl up there and crawl back. But what I found was, regardless of where people sat on the political spectrum, even the most ardent conservative Republicans would give me 3 or 4 minutes of their time, say, well, he's drug his wheelchair up here. I'll at least listen to him. And I found that in that period of time, telling about myself, saying why I'm running, talking about the lack of healthcare, how expensive it is, pharmaceuticals, doing something about Iowa's growing cancer rate. We have the second highest rates of cancer, only state with a growing cancer rate, our water crisis, saying I'm here to solve problems, not play political games. I think that was what was allowed me to be successful. Look, I'm in a rural state, so I will acknowledge that it's not going to be easy for me to get to all 3.2 million Iowans. So I'm going to have to raise a lot of money to be able to use all forms of media to be able to get in contact with people. But I think people are going to look, this is going to look and feel and sound different than your average senatorial candidate. And I think that allows me to get in the door. And I think our launch video shows that. I think there's a real yearning to get back to away from divisive, fear-mongering politics. People are tired of the cynicism. And I think a story of hope and positivity and inspiration, there's a real yearning for that. I think that's going to help me.
That video was called Underdog. James Carville.
So one final fun question. Your state legislative districts is in extreme southwestern Iowa, right? And there's an inordinate amount of LSU baseball fans in your district. Would you explain to our listeners how my alma mater became so popular in Council Bluffs?
You guys became everyone loves the LSU folks out here in Council Bluffs because you guys been like a plague here to the College World Series and love it because you get out there. It's lots of fun, and you guys set the record for the most amount of shots, every single record possible. So we love it when the LSU Tiger fans roll in here to the community.
And y'all have casino gambling, as I recall, which seems to be a big hit.
That's right.
All right, so we explained everything today. Good luck to you, man. And as we say, keep on rolling. Rolling. We're rolling. Iowa's rolling.
We're pushing Iowa towards change.
There we go.
Go to Turek for Iowa. #4iowa.com.
Okay. All right, tell Rob hello for us.
You're pushing and rolling Iowa towards
change. Rolling, man. You're rolling.
Josh Turek, thank you so much. How great is a glass of wine when you can find the perfectly priced bottle online with Naked Wines?
Well, as I say, this is a topic that I know something about, and I see what they do. And you would be literally, if you enjoy wine or you enjoy entertaining, the wines that they come up with at the price they come up with it are unbelievable. You don't have to go to the Safeway and try to find a bottle of wine that you don't know involved. These people go out, they find it, they find winemakers that you don't know about, you hadn't studied. There are people out there that buy them in bulk, they pass the savings along to you. There is no need to go pay $75 for a good bottle of wine. This figures out to be under $7 a bottle. And I would say you couldn't, maybe if you're Robert Parker or somebody, you could find a couple of these, but they got the buying power, they have the expertise, and they have good, remarkably good prices. I could recommend this highly to anybody.
Well, and
sometimes you get one you might not like, but what are you out $7? What the hell?
Well, not only that, you won't be paralyzed by wine options and prices. You get exactly what you want, and you have ditched that kind of searching for this and that for good. All thanks to Naked Wines. We love that they're a sponsor of this podcast, and you will too. As soon as you show up to summer parties or a romantic dinner for some of you young folks with a chilled bottle of an amazing vintage from a unique and storied independent winemaker from Naked Wines, you'll be an instant hit. By now, you know we love wine, and there's nothing better than a nice glass after a long day with friends or family. Naked Wines will have the perfect bottle for any moment at great prices. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Naked Wines. It's a wine club that directly connects you to the world's best independent winemakers so you can get world-class wine delivered straight to your door. Plus, you can use our code WARROOM for the code and password at nakedwines.com and get 6 bottles for just $39.99. I wasn't a math major, James, but that's less than $7 a bottle. Plus, Naked Wines helps you take any meal to the next level with a perfect bottle for any occasion. Thanks to Naked Wines, we can share an amazing steak paired with a 2022 Scott Kelly Willamette Valley Pinot Noir. It'll be a dinner to remember. And the best part, every bottle is a passion project from an independent winemaker. So you are literally making their business dreams come true. How do they do it? Naked brings you amazing wine straight from the winery at up to 60% less than what you would pay in store by cutting out extra costs like the middleman markups. Winemakers can pass those savings on to you without skimping on quality. Now's the time to join the Naked Wines community. Head to nakedwines.com/war room. Click enter voucher and put in our code war room for both the code and password for 6 bottles of wine for just $39.99 with shipping included. That's $100 off your first 6 bottles at nakedwines.com/war room when you use the code and password war room for 6 bottles of wine for $39.99. The link also is in our show notes. There are more hideous people than Laura Loomer, the Trump whisperer, though I can't think of them. This week, she bashed Florin Greenberg, recognized as a Medal of Honor recipient. She said he was disqualified because he endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016. That was more important to Loomer than 4 years earlier in Afghanistan, that he tackled a suicide bomber, detonating his explosives, saving many lives. He was severely wounded by another bomber at that site. Someone should explain to Loomer what courage, valor, and the Medal of Honor are all about. Greenberg personifies what it's all about. Then she pressured the weak Secretary of State to block visas from Gaza refugees coming to this country for essential medical care. This included a number of children. This is a first for me, but I want to associate myself with Marjorie Taylor Greene, the full MAGA congresswoman who smartly called on Trump and others to ignore this lunatic. And it's ironic because Loomer, portraying herself as a victim, then lashed back at Greene with sexual innuendos. That's ironic because she herself is suing over a suggestion she might have engaged in sexual indiscretions. So now to my new ally, Marjorie, you go, girl.
So for my outrage, the governor of Louisiana's man named Jeff Landry, let's say that no one says that this guy is actually the sharpest knife in a drawer or anything like that. He's
bulb in the closet.
He's not known for his searing intellect, but even he surprises me. He has now deployed the units of the Louisiana National Guard to Washington, D.C., so they can go take selfies outside the Capitol Grill with the Louisiana congressional delegation. Now, let me try to explain this to you, Governor. I'm sure you know this. We have a thing called hurricanes, and they're actually seasonal events. And I want to hold this chart up. Now, Governor, you see this chart? This is probability of hurricanes by date. It looks like the Matterhorn. You see that top date right there? That's September 10th. So the closer you are to September 10th on the upside or the downside, the more likely it is a hurricane. Can we understand that? Thank you. Now, we're August 20th. So we're 11 and 10, 21 days. We're 3 weeks away from the peak. Katrina hit on August 31st. We're in the middle of hurricane season. Got that? The middle of fucking hurricane season. And what are you doing? And guess what we need? Guess what is a legitimate use of the National Guard? Is to deploy after a disaster like a hurricane. And yet we're trying to score political points, taking selfies outside of 5 uber expensive restaurants in Washington, D.C. Please, sir, get these soldiers back home, have them on the ready to go in the event. Hopefully it won't happen, but you have to assume the rule is, I'll try to explain to you, hope for the best, expect the worst. All right? Try to get that through your head, please, sir. Please, sir, bring these troops back home. Let them stand ready to assist our citizens in the event that we have a catastrophe, of which has happened before. It's not a remote chance it happens. It's too big a chance. Jesus just like infuriates me to no end.
James, I don't think he's smart enough to understand.
He might not be, but I tried my best, 7th grade science teacher lecture to explain to him what hurricane season is.
When you need your sleep, how great does it feel dozing off after a delicious cup of Beam Dream?
I tell you what, it stuff works. It tastes good, and I would say this: it is a valuable part of your get some sleep toolbox, of which we constantly tell people, and I hear this all the time. The way I feel today is strongly related to how I slept last night. And
absolutely.
For God's sakes, use this.
Yeah. Summer is here, but that doesn't mean we can slow down and take a break. Every day, the headlines keep coming. The noise gets louder, and we get hit with another attempt to distract us, divide us, or wear us down. That's not an accident. Burnout is the goal, because if we're exhausted, we're easier to control. So don't give in. Rest is resistance. And one of the most powerful things you can do right now is wake up clear, energized, and ready to show up, take charge, and put your all into what's most important. That's why we use Beam Dreams Powder, a natural sleep blend that helps you get the kind of rest that actually restores you. I mean, let's be honest, you can't stay in the fight if you're constantly running on empty. Luckily, with science-backed ingredients like reishi, L-theanine, magnesium, apigenin, and melatonin, Dream helps you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up ready to organize, resist, and raise hell without the fog or the crash. It tastes incredible, smooth and delicious. Better yet, Beam is easy to add to your nightly routine. Simple, effective, and it works. I love chocolate peanut butter, but there are many great flavors for you to try. Since starting with Dream, you're going to feel sharper, more grounded, more present, and no longer dragging through difficult mornings or losing entire days to bad sleep. Now we're ready to face the day and ready to stand up for the things that matter. It's become a must in nightly routines to help us recharge, get up, and stay engaged in what matters most. Unlike other sleep aids, there's no grogginess, no fog, just focus. Beam's Dream Powder has improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep for people across the country, and you can be one of them. So here's the deal. Right now, Beam is offering up to 40% off their best-selling Dream Powder for our listeners. It's a limited time offer and the perfect way to overcome that exhaustion and stay in the fight every day. Go to shopbeam.com and use the code WARROOM at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/warroom and use the code WARROOM for up to 40% off. Sleep well, wake up ready, the fight continues. The link is in our show notes. All right, now for our listener questions. Carrie in San Diego, California, James says, the administration is suppressing voters in many ways. I fully expect them to add ICE or other federal agencies at polling places and voting booths for upcoming elections. Is there anything we can do to prevent this?
I think your fears are justified. And I think that the Virginia and New Jersey elections are going to dawn on him that he's going to lose in 2026. I think he's capable of anything. And what I suggest we do is what a lot of our friends did in the 2020 election is have legal experts, have people on guard, ready to go at a moment's notice. I think anyone that discounts this is a possibility in the 2026 congressional elections is frankly a fool. Now, am I saying that it's going to happen? I don't know if I can say it's going to happen. Can I say that he's going to try something before he gets slaughtered electorally? I'm pretty confident of that. And the best way to deal with this is 3 ways to deal with it: preparation, preparation, and more preparation.
Yeah. Good advice, James. John in Berea, Kentucky. I'm curious to know your thoughts on Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear's chances of being on the Democratic ticket for president or even vice president in the 2028 elections. Boy,
Well,
I would put him in the top 5 or 6. Probably not for the nomination, but who knows? He is a very attractive candidate with a proven ability to win in red areas without compromising on basically progressive values. And I think Andy Beshear is just a great face and figure for the Democratic Party.
Well, first of all, good to hear from him, Brewer. And there's a very, very good college there. And as I recall, it's very affordable. It's a great place. Good to hear from you. If a politician wins by 5 in a state that Democrats usually lose by 15 to 20, that alone should cause you to pay attention to that person. Of course, that would be Andy. And he probably has as good a record of economic development as any governor in the United States. I think I would put him in the top tier of potential, easily put him in the top tier of potential 2028 Democratic presidential candidates. He's there now. You know what I'd say to Governor Beshear, I'd say to anybody else, it's an awfully fast track out there. There'll be a lot of good people running, but I hope he runs, and he knows how to do the one thing that Democrats need. He knows how to win.
I think that's what politics is supposed to be about, James, but he is an enormously attractive
Absolutely.
governor, no question. Deborah in Madison, Mississippi says
wow,
she has heard you say that there is a possibility of Democrats taking the Senate and Mississippi could possibly flip to a Democrat. I'd love to hear more details, Deborah asks, about how this could possibly happen.
Okay, so we need to pick up a 4. I think I would rate us as the favorite in North Carolina. And I would also call out a really stupid Washington Post piece about Roy Cooper and how he could be affected by a trans event. My favorite part of the whole trans issue is Trump called at that time the governor of North Carolina, Pat McCrory, in 2016, and said, "What is this trans shit?" Okay, if this, I don't want to go back in the whole thing. It memo to the Washington Post is not going to hurt Roy Cooper and quit writing these jackass, stupid fucking stories. Okay, so with North Carolina, I'd say we're the favorite. Maine is considered to be a toss-up. I don't know. You might even say, given the political environment, I would make the Democrat a slight favorite. Ohio, Sherwood Brown, things have fallen into place. It's a tough state, but should be a big Democratic year. He has been elected to the Senate a number of times. He ran way ahead of the ticket in 2024. We just got this Iowa. Boy, do we have for the United States Senate candidates there. We don't even know if Senator Ernst will run for re-election. Iowans are not doing well. I think that's definitely in reach. Don't forget about Alaska. Don't forget about Alaska. We came very close in Alaska. It's very much in play. I would say the same thing for Texas. All right. Please stop and listen to me. Florida will be more in play than you can imagine. Florida's turned into a giant failed state. All right. The storms are killing them. Insurance rates are slaughtering them. Their housing market is literally collapsing right in front of us. It's been a state that's under one-party rule. Am I saying we're 50-50 in Florida? No, I'm not going to say we're 50-50 in Florida. Mississippi, we're as close to 50-50 as you can get. If you look at what Brandon did in 2023, and he did this, by the way, while Biden was president. And even if you look how Mike did when he ran for the Senate. And Scott Collins, we got a first-class candidate, and if I told you that Cindy Hyde Smith was dumber than concrete, some people might take that as a slander on concrete. This lady is, I think she's, I'm going to say this, but this is my view, controversial. I think she's dumber than Tommy Tuberville.
Oh man, that's a contest.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say that that she's Tubervillian in her stupidity.
Okay. Dot in North Virginia, doesn't say where in Northern Virginia, says, what's considered the base now in Virginia for Democrats? Who do you think Spanberger should focus on most? Spanberger should focus on a lot of the state. I mean, she should focus on 65% because she's got a good chance of winning the vast majority of them. Obviously, she has the basic Democratic base, so I think she has to focus a little bit on independents, self-styled independents at least, weaker Democrats, and a number of Republicans, particularly in Northern Virginia. She's in awful good shape.
She's in terrific shape. And or to give you an example, I do, and I believe yard signs say something. And by the way, really smart operatives that I know, like Saul Shore, Amanda Goodwall, agree with me. It's not, you wouldn't substitute it for a poll or anything like that, but it does say something. So Virginia election is coming up in November. I'm in the Shenandoah Valley. This is 75% red county. By the way, it's always been red. It voted for Herbert Hoover. Okay. In Highway 11, which runs the north-south spine of Shenandoah County, I have seen 2 signs for Winsome Sears, the Republican nominee. All right. I don't know what it means, but it means something. And I think if I had to guess, I think that Sears and the Republicans will, of course, they're going to carry Shenandoah County. I think they're going to underperform both in the percent of the vote they get, and also in the turnout is not going to be that great. And I'm going to go on record here saying I think the turnout in Fairfax, which is, for you know, familiar with Virginia, is right across the river from Washington, Loudoun, think Dulles Airport, probably Prince William, which is a kind of outer borough, suburban DC area, all have City of Alexandria, tons of federal workers, families of federal workers. I think the turnout in those 4 jurisdictions is going to approach, the Democratic turnout is going to approach 2024. I bet I have a 1,000-pound bet with Piers Morgan. I spotted him 5 points last night. Jesse Waters agreed to take $1,000 bet, and I spotted him 5 points. I'm going to have about $2,350 extra dollars. And I'm going to go to one of these Washington, D.C. restaurants and splurge because their restaurant reservations are down significantly as above that this goofy National Guard bullshit there.
Well, James, if you do, you can have your picture taken with the Louisiana National Guard.
Yeah, I could shake hands with the guy. You know, everybody's drowning and on a rooftop. I can go to the, to the Palm and get a picture with the guy. Yeah.
Eve in Monroe Township, New Jersey. This is difficult. How can we get Israeli influence out of American politics, James?
We can't. Okay, nor should we. And there, I understand you people that say it's an outside influence. I don't know, but there are a lot of, Jews in the United States that feel very close to Israel. A lot of people like myself that think that there needs to be a Jewish state in the Eastern Mediterranean. And we can't, nor should we. And also, the other countries have, real influence in the United States. And that's just part of our political system. If you want to argue that the influence is outside, you can do that. That's certainly a legitimate thing. But, they have lobbyists and they have people that support them. And I support the idea of Israel. I do not support the government of Israel. And it's 2 separate things.
As a number of people in Israel do not, including some former
like the
very
half a
top
million that show up protesting it. Yes.
And military and former Mossad, absolutely. Robbie in St. Louis, is it St. Louis, Mississippi, James?
Bay St. Louis. That's where they have a place there.
Well,
It's
Robbie,
very, very well known place.
Robbie,
Yes, it's good.
Robbie says in St. Louis. I guess he means Bay St.
Bay
Louis.
St. I'm almost positive.
He
but it
says,
might be this.
is it possible Trump is trying to create the appearance of turmoil, both nationally and internationally, so that he orders next year's elections be suspended? You know, I've been having an exchange with my dear friend Fred Wertheimer, who says that is constitutionally impossible. It cannot happen. I have said I think there's a 25 or 30% chance if Trump knows he's going to lose those elections, he will try to do something, invoke the Insurrection Act or whatever have you. And I don't automatically discount his prospects for succeeding with this Supreme Court. So I think it's unlikely, but I think you better be on guard, Robbie.
To my friend in Hancock County, Mississippi, my simple answer is yes.
Yeah. Mike in Cesar, Illinois says, why does it seem like so few people in government are standing up to Trump?
Well, because anybody that would stand up to him, he's fired them all.
Yeah.
Okay. If you, it's attrition. He's fired all the competent people in the government. So what he got left, for the most part, not all, still a lot of unbelievably competent people work for the United States government. I just make a short diversion here about the competence of federal employees. Bob Rubin famously said when he went from the Goldman Sachs to the Treasury Department, he did not notice a single % decline in the level of competence. Michael Lewis,
coming from Goldman Sachs to the Treasury Department, he said there was no decline in talent. Now, you know, Goldman Sachs, you can say what you want about Goldman Sachs, but they have smart, competent people that work there. Michael Lewis has really articulated and written down just how valuable and smart this federal workforce is. The one thing that we have done that is horrific is, you know, what they've done to federal employees. Yeah, no, it really is. James, before we go, I want to just pay quick tribute to Jules Witcover, who died at the age of 98. Jules, for more than 60 years, was really one of the great shoe leather reporters and ever. He wrote about a dozen books. He wrote for the LA Times, the Washington Post. He and Jack Germond wrote a famous political column. He was a reporter's reporter. I don't know if reporters are as good today. I know one thing, they don't have as much fun as they did in Jules Witcover's heyday. Jules, you left a great legacy.
Yeah, 90 years old. Me and Jack Germond, I mean, they were, you know, they were quite a pair. And yeah, my tip of the hat to Korea Jules Witcover.
Yeah,
thanks for bringing it up.
Absolutely. All right, keep those letters and questions coming in. If we didn't get to yours this week, we'll get to it next week. Thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd appreciate it if you check out the links to our sponsors, Trust and Will, Quince, Naked Wines, and Beam, and our episode show notes. We deeply thank you for supporting them because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go take a look. You also can find other shows you might enjoy in the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. Remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room planning.